President Trump has addressed the U.S. Congress touting a golden age for America with sweeping tariffs, a Ukraine aid freeze, and just in the last couple of hours, it's been confirmed that America will no longer be sharing intelligence with Ukraine. That pretty much puts, some would suggest, an end to Ukraine's serious prospects in its war with Russia. But Trump spoke about tariffs, he spoke about the war, he spoke about his domestic agenda. What are the key takeaways of what Donald Trump said? Because what America says and what Trump says now is going to impact us one way or the other all over the world. Tariffs are a huge issue. Let's take a look at this report before we begin our discussion.
We don't want it. Wokeness is trouble. Wokeness is bad. It's gone. It's gone.
With a hopeful note, but it immediately devolved into chaos.
We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth. And we have ended weaponized government where, as an example, a sitting president is allowed to viciously prosecute his political opponent, like me. So I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. My administration will reclaim power from this unaccountable bureaucracy.
Unusually, Trump name-checked Joe Biden, calling him the worst president in history.
Joe Biden, the worst president in American history.
But it's crucial to note that while post-pandemic inflation was high worldwide during the previous administration in the U.S., the U.S. had the strongest economic recovery in the world at the end of the Biden administration, with a booming stock market, a decrease in inflation, and strong job creation.
India charges us auto tariffs.
Trump slammed India, among others, for having trade policies that are unfair to Americans.
On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them.
He also touted February's stunning drop in border crossings and his immigration crackdown.
Within hours of taking the oath of office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. And what a job they've done. As a result, illegal border crossings last month were by far the lowest ever recorded, ever.
However, in the U.S., public monthly data only goes back to the year 2000, and border crossings have been falling over the past year after rising to record highs in 2023. Meanwhile, several dozen House Democrats were holding up small circular signs during this joint address in protest, reading Musk's deals, save Medicaid, and protect veterans. As Donald Trump claims to have reignited America's momentum and pride, his bold actions continue to shake Washington and the world. With a wrecking ball approach that dismantles long-standing policies and pacts, the question remains, is this the revolution America needs or the chaos it fears? Only time will tell. Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV.
Well, joining us now, Kawal Sibal, former Indian Foreign Secretary, Todd Harrison, Senior Fellow and Foreign and Defense Policy Program at AEI, Dr. Michael Owens, Alex Zadan joins us as well. Thank you all very much for being with us. Dr. Michael Owens, let me come to you first. How does Trump's tariff-centric economic vision essentially signal a reordering of global interdependence? Is this a change of the order which has existed for decades?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I think it does signal a bit of a change, but it's also very clear as to what Trump said he was going to do. You know, his America First policy, if you will, is really sets us up on a world stage in a ways that, you know, we've only seen in his last time that he was president. You know, retreating back from the WHO, the World Health Organization. He talked about pulling out from the Paris Accords. and just a host of other things that he's really put us. I would say it's really unfortunate where he's going with this. Obviously, tariffs is his major thing, but smart trade is what we should be looking at as a country instead of literally creating trade wars. Trump's American First policy really is a reckless trade war. I don't think he's really looking at the economic mismanagement, and I think there's a lack of foresight there. And in cities like mine in Mapleton, where small business owners are looking at how they can continue to survive and thrive, and the continuous cost of goods that continue to go up, is Trump really using Biden as a scapegoat? And it's time to end that. As mentioned before, the economy was strong when Biden left office. And what we've seen go on is not where the American people want to go. We want to be back to a situation where there are lower costs. We want to focus on sustainable jobs. We want to stabilize the economy in the U.S., but across the world as well. Instead, we do have chaos and higher prices and much more uncertainty.
Alex Zidane, do you agree? Do you believe that by targeting Mexico, Canada, and certainly China, it's not ultimately in America's interests on the issue of tariffs? With Mexico and Canada, the relationship is fairly fraught at this stage, particularly Canada.
I want a target painted on the Chinese Communist Party. Economic, military, humanitarian, whatever the case may be. The Chinese Communist Party is the #1 opponent of the United States on the world stage and should be treated accordingly. Obviously, Justin Trudeau and President Trump are speaking today, so negotiation with our friends, the Canadians and the Mexican government, will be continuing. But this is a different page from President Trump. A lot of Republican presidents, certainly going back into the 80s, into the 90s, wanted free trade, wanted unregulated trade between borders as a symbol of a more globalized world. President Trump is in a way a throwback to the way that America operated about 100 years ago. And that's what he's bringing in both his first term and in this new term. That's his approach to the world, the approach of a deal maker, the approach of someone who uses both carrot and stick. And when you hear lines in the speech that criticize other countries, I want your audience to know this very clearly. President Trump doesn't blame other nations for looking out for themselves and their populations. He blames American politicians of both parties from the past decades for not looking out for America.
Ambassador Sybil, the other key part of what Donald Trump focused on was Ukraine. He did mention Zelensky, who apparently wants to come back onto the table really quick. And unrelated to his speech in Congress, we now know that America has said that American intelligence aid to Ukraine is going to be cut off. We are now also hearing that Germany has told Ukraine that they are unable to transfer more weaponry at this juncture to Ukraine beyond what they have done. This being the case, is it essentially game over for Zelensky in the war against Russia? Does he have any choices?
Well, Zelensky played his cards very badly at the White House. He had a chance to step back a little bit, but he gave an interview to Fox News in which he showed no signs of any change in his approach and thinking. And then he went to London and he was lionized there, and lots of promises were made to him by the leaders of Europe who were present there, and that boosted his ego, and he charted out his future course of action, which was very uncompromising in every way. He wanted more weapons, more support, NATO membership, security guarantees, what have you. And then, obviously, some people have been advising him that he must step back a bit after Trump decided to cut off aid, military aid for the time being, that he should step back because his own survival will be at stake. So he's made some kind of a contrition, but it's not an apology. And if you read between the lines, it is quite ambiguous. He's standing his ground. He's not speaking out of any conviction. It is a survival strategy. And now you just informed me, I didn't know that the Americans have threatened to cut off.
Not threatened, they've done it.
Access to
they've essentially
Starlink.
done it. Yeah.
So if they have stopped the access to Starlink, then clearly the game is over.
It's not so much Starlink as it is in CIA intelligence sharing, which is invaluable. But some would suggest as invaluable as the actual transfer of artillery.
But that's important. But for targeting and everything else, it needs a Starlink.
Sure. I'm not sure about Starlink as yet.
But anyway, this is an incremental.
It is a huge step.
To put pressure on Zelensky. The writing on the wall for him is pretty clear. I don't think he can continue to resist, but I must say that the Europeans are putting a big spanner in the works. At the end of the day, they can play spoiled sports, and they feel left out. They feel that they should have a place on the table, that no decision should be taken on the future of Ukraine behind their back or behind the back of Ukraine, and they can't be totally ignored. At the end of the day, they have to be brought into the game, and the Americans have to decide at what stage. This can delay the process. For the Russians, this has become a bit of a problem too, because the Russians thought that the things were proceeding smoothly. The two sides had met a couple of times, and the results seem to have been fairly positive. Now the Russians have to also look back and see whether the European spanner in the works and Zelensky's conviction that he can somehow will his way through and get what he wants, whether this will delay the process of negotiating with the United States.
Ambassador, just 1 second. I just wanted to go across to Todd Harrison. Mr. Harrison, by prioritizing domestic needs over, say, supporting Ukraine, is Donald Trump articulating a new realism that abandons America as a guarantor of democratic freedoms or values? And does he, in the process, risk a vacuum for authoritarian powers such as Russia to exploit?
Well, what we are seeing is certainly a major shift in U.S. foreign policy and national security. The details have yet to be fleshed out fully, but what we're starting to see is a very significant pullback from our allies and partners around the world, and specifically from Europe and the U.S. And its traditional role in being the peacekeeper and the guarantor of security throughout Europe. He is definitely pulling away from that, and we see much of our attention on national security being refocused on homeland defense and border security, which it has not, been as focused on in the past. So there's a big rebalancing that appears to be underway in foreign policy, but also, specifically in national security and the types of military capabilities that the U.S. is investing in.
Dr. Owens, does Donald Trump's selective engagement with allies, sort of herald a new era of conditional American partnership, very different from what we've seen in the past?
It does, because it's one that's not based on building true partnerships and treating your allies as allies and your enemies as enemies. No one's suggesting that we take a soft approach to China. But when you have some of our closest allies, literally our neighbors to the north and the south, and you admonish them over and over again, and you don't look for solutions, you look to basically strong arm them. It does send a wrong message. It does send a message that hopefully will be changed over time. President Trump said last night, he's going to, about making America rich again. And talking about the tariffs, which he continues to go into, which in some ways is oversimplifies the complex economic dynamics that we have to look at. You simply can't say, that how are you going to go in and force other countries to do certain things? Now, yes, there is a short-term benefit potentially to doing that. But when you ostracize certain countries, specifically those that are supposed to be your allies, what you do is you leave room for other countries to come in and take up that slack. And they're absolutely going to do so. They're going to find opportunities where the U.S. has pulled back on to take the lead in certain areas. And, even notice last night the discussions around where we stand with drill, baby, drill and fossil fuels. And there's been a lot of discussion late about that. But, we have to look at how that is impacting other areas and how, pulling out of areas where the U.S. should be leaders in some of these spaces as it relates to environmental sustainability and where we're going to go. I am just troubled at the fact of looking at how he's led so much through this America first, which really seems like America only in a lot of situations, which is troubling on the global front.
Alex Sedan, he keeps referring to Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau. He's offered Canada in the past to become a state of America. He also said we'll get Greenland one way or the other today. Some would suggest that he's being delusional. Canada isn't going to accept being a part of America. And how does he assume that Greenland is going to do that as well? Or does he suggest that one way or the other means America will forcibly acquire Greenland, which it very easily can? Does this not send bizarre signals of bizarre leadership and inconsistent messages across the world?
Well, the speech didn't contain anything about Canada, and there was one sentence
Sure.
about Greenland that was almost a throwaway line, perhaps to troll the Democrats in the audience. Unpredictability is Donald Trump's secret sauce. He's pursued that in both his first term and his second term. It's something that keeps people who he's negotiating with off balance to not know what he's truly thinking. And obviously, he is intent on showing the world that the United States is going to have resolve and use its economic power, and not just its military power, not just its soft power and hard power, but the power of the world's largest economy to get good and fair deals for its citizens. That's the genesis, and that's the center of America first. And I think that the messages that you're hearing from the president, you have to always recognize who the audience is. The audience in the speech last night was the American people, but I believe even the Democrats that were sitting just rows away from him, silently holding up those signs or having temper tantrums and being escorted from the room. The negotiations that are going to be going on, the negotiation that's going to be going on between President Trump and outgoing Prime Minister Trudeau today, that's going to have a different tenor and a different tone.
All right. Ambassador Sybil, there were two references to India on the issue of tariffs. He spoke about the automobile sector, but we do have our Commerce Minister in the United States. Do you expect this to be a serious problem for India going forward, tariffs?
Well, I think we're trying to manage it, and there is a degree of optimism that we will be able to handle it. As you know, in the budget, we already made some duty reductions, keeping America in mind. My understanding is that the government is fully working on this. They see the dangers of letting this situation go out of hand and want to preempt this by doing a lot of homework, very detailed homework, to see where we can actually reduce our tariffs, keeping in mind America's desire to export more to India, and where it may not hurt us, and in return ask for some access to the American market. And the fact that our Commerce Minister is currently there and meeting the USTR and the Commerce Secretary with a clear agenda to send positive signals to the United States that we are keen to have a multi-sector commercial trade agreement with them, and are willing to make the necessary changes in our tariff structures. So my impression in talking to people who are involved in this is that, yes, they are concerned. Obviously, they won't like the worst to happen, but there's a feeling that we can offer a good deal to the Americans and get a reasonably good deal in return.
Sure. A final question to you, Todd Harrison. President Trump spoke about a golden dome. It's a ballistic missile shield. America already has one, but it's not quite as big as the one that he wants to establish. This seems to be one of his biggest national security priorities. We've seen the, a ballistic missile dome or shield work in the case of Israel. Or is America looking to replicate that model, albeit, with a country which is 400 times larger?
Yeah, so the comparisons to Iron Dome that the administration has made, they're really rhetorical comparisons. In terms of the technology you need, it's very different. The Israeli Iron Dome system is mainly designed to shoot down, relatively short range rockets, missiles, artillery, drones. A missile defense system spanning the entire continental United States would also have to be able to intercept very long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, cruise missiles, and obviously cover a much larger area. So the technology needed is substantially different. It will be an enormous investment. It will take many years, well over a decade, to field such a system. But the United States can do it. The technology exists. The technology is there. The funding, while costing tens of billions of dollars, it is something that the United States can afford within its defense budget. And so, the president does seem committed to going down this path. I would also note that a large portion of what you need for a homeland missile defense system like Golden Dome is going to be space-based.
Right.
And so, it will be increasing our space capabilities, including the president has called for a space-based missile interceptor system that would be part of it.